This is a WPTV First Alert Weather Special.
This storm is continuing to strengthen.
Hurricane Nicole, now Hurricane Nicole, that official word coming moments ago.
Another year, another storm season.
Bureau for Piers just starting to work through Port St. Lucie. Now it's starting to really pick up again.
Florida, the epicenter for most of the damage last year.
The winds are coming in from the south and slamming across the lake.
From central Florida and the Treasure Coast to southwest Florida, large sections of the state still recovering.
In Florida, it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when a storm will strike.
Now, another storm season is here, and it's time to get ready.
I hope it doesn't happen, but who knows?
Florida's population continues to boom. Many of the people moving here have never experienced hurricane season.
In the event there has to be an evacuation, there's a proper way of doing it.
And local governments taking action after last year.
The top of the wall is 10 foot above sea level.
Vulnerable areas being reinforced. The massive barrier being built that will help guard the coastline against future storms. Florida was ground zero for most of the damage and devastation caused during the 2022 hurricane season. Ian literally wiping out parts of southwest Florida right off the map, making landfall as a powerful Category 4 storm in September. Less than 2 months later, Nicole pounded parts of the Treasure Coast as it came on shore in November, packing Category 1 strength winds. Hello and welcome. I'm First Alert Chief Meteorologist Steve Weigel. We're just outside the House of Refuge Museum on Hutchinson Island and just down from Bathtub Beach. Still shut down because of damage caused by Hurricane Nicole. The storm brought significant erosion and devastating flooding along MacArthur Boulevard. Martin County pulled lifeguards from the beach and is still telling visitors to swim at their own risk. Over the course of the next hour, we're going to show you what's being done to slow beach erosion right here on the Treasure Coast, and we're going to check into the areas hardest hit by Ian on the West Coast. But first, Florida's population is surging. We all know it. In fact, many newcomers here have never experienced a hurricane before. Anchor Holly Davis starts our special coverage on what everyone should have on their radar as we start this hurricane season.
That Jill helped me to organize.
So you're still kind of in boxes here, huh?
After 30 years, Robin Pitch finally decided to join her family, shoving off the brutal winters in Pennsylvania for the perks of Florida's sunshine. Like many who've recently moved to the state, she's getting ready for her first hurricane season, the start now just days away.
So, and I had these from up north because when our power went out, I needed this as well.
This year, Florida will break in a lot of new movers. Port St. Lucie is no exception. Data from the Florida Department of Highway Safety shows nearly 5,000 new licenses were issued since last June for St. Lucie County residents. New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, California are some of the major states people relocated from.
Even in the city of Port St. Lucie, that's another of our heavily populated areas.
St. Lucie County officials know the real litmus test to see how prepared places like Port St. Lucie are won't come with a practice drill, which is why they're spending this time asking newcomers especially get to know the evacuation routes and flood zones.
In the event there has to be an evacuation, there's a proper way of doing it, and there's a coordinated way of doing it, so that way not everyone just leaves as needed, and there's a unified approach to something that makes sense.
It says fill tub with water, on the couch, plastic and put a blanket. Update medication, check flashlights and batteries.
Not knowing what's to come, Pitch is using these last few days to go over the checklist her 93-year-old mother made her, praying this hurricane season is a bust.
I hope it doesn't happen, but who knows?
Holly Davis, WPTV News Channel 5.
It really doesn't matter if you've lived here your whole life or this is your first hurricane season. Hurricanes and severe weather, they have an impact, and it's the price we pay for living in paradise. Colorado State University does their annual seasonal hurricane forecast. They're expecting 13 named storms. 6 of those will become hurricanes and 2 intense hurricanes. Those are category 3, 4, or 5. Forecasting these types of storms is always challenging. It really takes a team of meteorologists working 24/7 to not only predict where they are going, but how strong they will be. And they're always fine-tuning those forecasts too. First Alert meteorologist James Whelan takes a look at some of the changes we'll see in this year's hurricane season.
Yeah, a couple changes this year, no big major changes, but the biggest change we're going to see is to this, the tropical weather outlook, where we shade the area and they let you know what percentage chance it has to develop. Well, that's going to be extended now to 7 days instead of 5 days, where we say in the next 2 days it has a chance to develop, and in the next 7 days it has the chance to develop. And what that's going to lead to is the systems are likely going to be introduced a lot sooner on this map here, and also they're going to be bumped up to the next category, the higher or the medium chance, a lot sooner too. And that's going to lead to a lot better lead times out there. Plus the Genesis areas here, the shaded areas, are going to be a lot larger because you got to account for that much time. Plus, in the text bulletin, the Invest numbers are going to be there. We've been telling you about these, Invest 92L, 93L, and so on and so forth. Those will be listed in there so you can identify them a lot easier. The forecast cone, it's changed through the years. This year, not so much. Doesn't really change. In fact, kind of a wash, where it's gotten bigger on some of the hours and smaller on some of the other ones. The 2.5 and the 3-day cone a little bit smaller, but the 4 and 5-day cone a little bit bigger, so it kind of is the same as last year.
Hurricane Nicole officially made landfall on North Hutchinson Island. It came onshore as a Category 1 storm, but still caused more than $500 million in damage. Dozens of beachfront homes in Brevard and Volusia County fell into the Atlantic. And Nicole caused widespread damage on the Treasure Coast. Here at Bathtub Beach, there's a multi-million-dollar project going on right now. As John Shaman reports, it's to help reinforce the coastline in this area.
For months, Bathtub Beach at the southern end of South Hutchinson Island has been closed as work continues on a major coastal resilience project. A protective seawall is being built into the dune.
Driven into the ground to 16 foot below sea level.
Martin County is spending $3.2 million on the work. That should cover about 25% of the cost. The Federal Emergency Management Agency will pick up the rest.
So the top of the wall is 10 foot above sea level. The base flood elevation in the area is elevation 5. So what that does is gives us 5 foot of freeboard for storm surge in the event of a hurricane, a major hurricane that comes through.
The hope is to limit the number of emergency sand hauls when the dune is compromised.
Once that wall is complete, the work isn't done just yet. MacArthur Boulevard itself is going to be raised 2.5 feet, and a wall will also be placed on the lagoon side to protect the infrastructure.
During Hurricane Nicole, the water levels covered the road, reaching 3 to 4 feet. The work here at Bathtub Beach should be completed sometime in the fall, so by the next tourist season, this popular stretch of sand is once again open for business. In Stewart, John Shaman, WPTV, News Channel 5.
Coming up,
we recommend that they put their next of kin somewhere on their body.
An ominous warning.
In their pocket or even magic marker on their arm.
Ignoring evacuation orders is never a good idea.
It's always a challenge to get the buy-in that they must leave.
The grim reality of what happens when people choose to ride out a storm. And judging a storm's threat level, the difference between a hurricane watch and a hurricane warning.
You're watching a WPTV First Alert Weather Special.
We break down the different categories for tropical storms and hurricane categories on their wind speed. A tropical storm is a system that has to reach at least 39 miles an hour. Hurricanes are rated on a scale from Category 1 to Category 5. Category 1, the weakest storms, just a little stronger than tropical storms, but these can still cause some damage with tree branches down. You can see the palm trees there blowing, and of course we have beach erosion possible with winds anywhere from 74 to about 95 miles an hour. Category 2, start to see some more damage with large trees and tree branches coming down, perhaps some minor structural damage occurring with Category 2 storms, and of course the threat for tornadoes. Category 3, this is where we really start to see the potential for damage to structures and large trees coming down, and starting to see some significant beach erosion and storm surge. As you get into Category 4 and Category 5, the strongest hurricanes, they're rare, but they cause catastrophic damage, especially along the coastline and close by inland areas. Heading into hurricane season, it's very important that you be aware of the alerts that may be issued for your area. First Alert meteorologist Kate Wenzel breaks down the difference between a hurricane watch and a hurricane warning.
Thanks, Steve. Let's talk about the difference between a hurricane watch and a warning. Now, a watch is issued when 74 mile per hour or higher sustained winds are possible within 48 hours. So this just means that hurricane conditions possible, not expected. Now, a warning, a little more serious, that's issued when these winds are expected within 36 hours that hurricane force conditions will occur. So what do you need to do when a watch is issued? Well, you need to take some action, bring in your outdoor furniture, secure any loose objects. This is also the time you want to start to put up hurricane shutters on your windows, because you don't want to wait until the wind speeds get so high that it does become dangerous. Also, you need to know your evacuation zone and have a plan where you're going to go if you need to evacuate. Also have a plan for your pets. Now, what do you do when a warning is issued? This is a little more serious. You want to rush to completion your storm preps and leave area immediately when and if directed by local officials.
It's also critical that you know if you live in an evacuation zone, what type of zone you live in, and your plan of action should a tropical storm or hurricane form. Megan McRoberts reports on the challenges that first responders face when residents, especially along the coastline, ignore evacuation orders.
Please evacuate.
Please take these mandatory evacuations serious.
Storm after storm, first responders make the same plea, asking people to leave town for their own safety as major hurricanes churn off our coast. Here in 2016, before Hurricane Matthew.
It has gotten just a tiny bit stronger.
Hurricane Irma in 2017.
Category 4, that's 8 a.m.
Or in 2019, Hurricane Dorian. Storm surge and winds from outer bands still caused flooding and damage, but nothing compared to what experts feared could happen.
We've had some doozies.
Making people like Sherry Kramer glad they just decided to ride out those storms. She lives on Nettles Island in St. Lucie County, a waterfront community often among the first to be told to leave.
I'm like kind of almost in the middle.
One year she did evacuate.
You know, I left once and then went to Palm City and they lost power. So, you know, it's like we had power, but they didn't.
But no storm is the same, making that decision a personal one.
Would you say you have hurricane fatigue?
Yeah, I think we did last year.
It's their home. They're not forced out of it. They want to stay there, and we can't make them leave.
St. Lucie County Sheriff Ken Mascara says overcoming numbness to hurricanes is a challenge for first responders, even after telling people rescue crews cannot guarantee they'd be able to reach them in an emergency.
It's always a challenge to get the buy-in that they must leave.
Mascara says they do try to track areas where people are not evacuating to check those areas first after a storm blows over.
If the storm is very severe, a Category 4 or 5, we recommend that they put their next of kin somewhere on their body, in their pocket, or even magic marker on their arm.
Our chief meteorologist, Steve Weigel, says even when major hurricanes Francis and Jean hit the Treasure Coast, 10 to 15,000 people ignored evacuation orders during Hurricane Jean, even with Francis hitting only 3 weeks before. But with the West Coast hit by Hurricane Ian just last season, Mascara hopes that will reverse some hurricane fatigue.
And we could probably use photos from that disaster to educate new residents here of what to expect in a Category 5 hurricane.
Kramer now weighing what she's willing to ride out this season.
After Cat 3, I seriously think about it.
Megan McRoberts, WPTV News Channel 5.
People who live farther inland also have to take precautions. You want to know where are the evacuation routes, whether you have to leave at all, and when you should start preparing after a storm forms. Chris Gilmore breaks down what folks in western communities should be doing to prepare.
Aside from a few mobile home or RV parks, there aren't any flood or evacuation zones in western Palm Beach County. But in growing areas like Westlake, people out here say there still is a major concern in the event of an evacuation, and that's traffic. Bustling and beautiful, South Floridians know hurricanes are not to be taken lightly. That includes those in Palm Beach County knowing their hurricane and flood evacuation zones.
When we issue an evacuation zone for an area, we issue it far enough in advance to where individuals can safely leave that area.
One thing that doesn't always run smoothly in western Palm Beach County is traffic.
North Lake is a nightmare.
North Lake, Southern Boulevard, Okeechobee.
The usual suspects and the frustrating traffic jams.
Definitely the traffic getting heavier out here.
And it's no fun for anyone involved.
Traffic's bad when you have kids too in the traffic jam. You know, it gets a little, you're frustrated, but they're frustrated in the backseat.
We reached out to county engineers who are aware of the problem.
Well, yeah, North Lake is a challenge because that's a major east-west corridor. And, you know, Avenir development has been undergoing the last couple of years. And, of course, you got Westlake.
David Rick says with the population out in the Loxahatchees, Westlakes, Avenirs, and Ardens of Palm Beach County booming, there's no quick fix for an easy east-to-west evacuation.
The challenge is that you have very few east-west corridors that moves that traffic. And so if you wait until the last minute, you may be sitting in traffic for an extended period of time.
However, Ricks did have some advice.
For this hurricane season, I think the key thing is being prepared. And if there is a major event storm, if the option is to leave early, I will leave early.
In the event of a dangerous storm, Dowd says she's more worried about access to essential services than evacuation.
This was our first hurricane season.
Completely different, right?
Very different. I'm like, where's the water? You can't get water, you can't get gas. It was crazy, very insane.
Those necessities are a big reason why she says hurricane season is something to take seriously. That includes having a road to safety.
Your main roads that everybody takes every day, those are already congested as it is. So if there's an evacuation, we're definitely, you know, bumper to bumper with cars. There's no other route.
Pay attention to media outlets like yours to get the latest information.
Prep, just one way out of a jam. In Palm Beach County, Chris Gilmore, WPTV News Channel 5.
When a storm threatens, you also need an evacuation plan for your pets. Hani Rodriguez reports on the limited shelter options available.
Peanut, Rufus, and Leo spend most afternoons at the dog park in Port St. Lucie.
He's not scared of anything other than maybe a hurricane.
Peanut's safety is top of mind ahead of hurricane season.
After we've got the house all shuttered up, it's like now we need to make sure he's safe and feels comfortable.
That's the sentiment shared amongst these pet owners.
Rufus is like a little kid or a little baby.
Jerry Bakes, Rufus's owner, says Rufus gets along well with other dogs and is crate trained, which is a good thing in case they ever need to evacuate to a shelter.
I have to sneak in some treats when nobody's looking.
Right now, St. Lucie County's only pet-friendly shelter is located at Westwood High School in Fort Pierce. And according to Ron Guerrero, the county's public safety director, he feels confident that's enough.
We've been fortunate enough where we've been able to manage the numbers. We're working with our partners at the St. Lucie Public Schools to identify a additional location where we can have as an alternate should that first location exceed capacity.
The more that they can do to help pet owners, because again, they're our babies.
Maria Valencia is the Animal Safety Division Manager. She says due to state health and safety regulations, you won't be allowed to shelter in the same room as your pet.
The people are housed separately from the pets. The pets stay in crates during their stay at the shelter. And during that stay, there are designated times that you can actually go to the pet side to take care of your animal.
This will be Debbie and Peanut's first hurricane season together.
We're trying to think of, for hurricane season coming up, like what can we do if he can't get outside to use the rest to go to the bathroom.
She shared this idea with us.
I was thinking maybe just getting some sod from like Home Depot a couple days if we know there's a hurricane coming, and putting it in the garage, and maybe he'll do that.
And until then, he'll enjoy as many belly rubs as he can get. In St. Lucie County, I'm Hani Rodriguez, WPTV News Channel 5.
From Andrew to Wilma to Ian, hurricane names, they take on especially a significant importance to those who have gone through those storms firsthand. You know, the World Meteorological Organization determines the names, and First Alert meteorologist Steve Villanueva You're going to tell us what the storm names are for this year.
Thanks, Steve. As we head into this upcoming tropical season, these are the names that will be used for this year. They begin with Arlene. Then we have Brett and Cindy and Don, Emily, Franklin, Gert, Harold, Idalia, Jose, Katia. Then we go to Lee, Margot, Nigel, Ophelia, Philippe, Rena, Sean, Tammy, Vince, and finally, Whitney. Now, 2 names last year were retired. First was Fiona. Fiona did produce big-time rains across Puerto Rico. Even though it was a Category 1, it produced huge amounts of flooding. So that name was retired. Farrah will be the new name that will be used. And of course, here in Florida, we had Hurricane Ian came across as a Category 4, a major hurricane into Fort Myers Beach. That one produced widespread devastation. Ian has been canceled, and from now on, Idris will be used instead.
Still ahead on the 2023 First Alert Weather Special. Long-term recovery efforts hitting a roadblock in Southwest Florida.
How's fundraising going? There is donor fatigue when it comes to disasters.
Victims of Hurricane Ian still struggling with basic necessities.
I only took what I could fit in 2 garbage bags.
One organization stepping up with a vow to never stop helping the community. And FEMA assistance issues.
He denied it, saying there was only a few scratches.
The agency warning people that disaster relief money is not meant to be an alternative to insurance.
For a lot of people, that might mean they'll receive a few $100s or a few $1,000s.
Plus, tornadoes and storm surge, the dangerous weather conditions that come with hurricanes.
This is a WPTV First Alert Weather Special.
Hurricane Ian, changing lives forever.
I've been living in a tent for the last month.
The catastrophic storm, ravaging communities and leaving people with nothing.
You go through periods of, well, this is how it's going to end.
Ian had an agonizing impact on Southwest Florida. Now the Red Cross making a never-ending pledge to help people get back on their feet.
On a long road ahead to be able to recover and to bring the beach back.
Hurricane Ian is now considered the 2nd deadliest storm to strike the continental U.S., packing maximum sustained winds of 155 miles an hour. The system left behind a path of destruction across multiple states. Ian struck as a powerful Category 4 storm along Florida's west coast. It officially came on shore near Cayo Costa, west of Fort Myers. The storm's intense winds, waves, and rain produced one of the costliest hurricanes in Florida history. The American Red Cross has been on the ground there since Ian struck, helping residents in the area. I traveled to Fort Myers Beach with anchor Ashley Glass, and we took a look at the relief efforts still ongoing and the restoration process.
I stayed in my house.
He can't wash away the memory.
There was a lot of water just came in real quick.
Or dry up the pain.
You go through periods of, well, this is how it's going to end.
Nearly 8 months since rescue crews forced Brian Wetzel to leave his dream bungalow of more than a decade on Fort Myers Beach with Hurricane Ian bearing down.
I only took what I could fit in 2 garbage bags.
What do you think when you look out over the beach now?
Haven't been there. I haven't been there.
Is that on purpose?
Yeah.
Why is that?
It hurts. I mean, I loved it so much down there.
Brian bouncing between multiple shelters or less.
And then I've been living in a tent for the last month, waiting for this to come available.
This being a trailer from the state where he landed beginning of May.
How many people are like Brian in these same shoes right now?
So we have about 800 shelter resident transition clients.
Surveying the damage alongside Jill Palmer, Regional Red Cross Director, from high above Fort Myers Beach to street level.
They've got a long road ahead to be able to recover and to bring the beach back.
Palmer tells us in addition to the 800 locals they're helping for a full year after the storm, steering them towards a permanent home, there's also a 2-year commitment to spend every bit of the $94 million raised by the Red Cross precisely on Hurricane Ian recovery, which sounds like a lot.
How's fundraising going? There is donor fatigue when it comes to disasters. With these repetitive disasters that we're experiencing back to back to back, it really becomes background noise.
Is the Red Cross responding to more disasters right now?
Yes, we are.
Palmer tells us in the 80s, the Red Cross responded to an average of 3 weather-related disasters a year, worth $1 billion each. In the last 5 years, climbing to 18 a year. The Red Cross expecting a bump to 20 weather-related disasters in the next few years, on the way to 30 eventually. But a bright spot, scooped from those crushing numbers. Palmer says Lee County in the Fort Myers area just designated as one of 10 places in the entire country so prone and vulnerable to disaster that the Red Cross will help financially for as long as it takes.
This designation means the Red Cross will help Lee County indefinitely.
Yes.
That lasting support, coupled with the soul of Red Cross volunteers, brings hope to all those who call Fort Myers Beach home.
Did you get involved after the hurricane, or were you?
Absolutely.
WPTV Chief Meteorologist Steve Weigel, who's been volunteering himself and fundraising with the Red Cross for more than 20 years, talks with Byron Eek, who volunteered for 6 weeks after the storm. Signs of Ian's wrath all around them.
Obviously, you can't live in this building now because of the strong winds and the fact that more than likely the water came well above
10
this.
10 feet higher.
10 feet higher. So it went right in all these rooms, and that's what the power of the water is what really impresses me the most. You went through the storm at your house. What was that like?
Yeah. That was intense. You start questioning yourself, like, should we have left?
And you're still not actually in your place.
Nope. Everything has got to be gutted. Helping people is very humbling, but helping people on the worst day of their life it gets really addicting, and that's why I constantly try to deploy.
Like Byron, Brian is plugging away too incredibly as the blows keep coming.
What's going on with your health, Brian?
I have cancer. I feel okay for the most part. It's just like the hurricane. It's like you just take it as it comes and you deal with it. This is what I have to do now.
Reporting on Fort Myers Beach, Ashley Glass, WPTV.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency, also known as FEMA, comes in after a storm hits and provides immediate relief funds to communities, cities, towns, villages. But they may not cover exactly what you think they cover. Kate Hussey spoke to someone who went through Hurricane Ian in Okeechobee County and who has had multiple claims denied.
That's what was hidden in top of my roof.
Hurricane Ian.
I was inside.
Still a scary memory for Lourdes Gill.
And every time it hit with so much strength that my RV was going up and down.
Perhaps even scarier for her than the storm itself was the aftermath.
I showed the damages on my RV. The awning went right through the ceiling, all the way down to the shower head, and it has a big hole like this.
Lourdes or Lou filed a disaster assistance claim with FEMA, but when a representative came to take a look,
he denied it, saying there was only a few scratches.
Lou appealed it.
With pictures and everything.
She even got the damage looked at by a licensed appraiser.
Everything came out to $13,000 to $14,000, and plus what you have to pay him for the services.
To her surprise,
the appeal was looked at on 12/3 and it was denied.
What was your reaction to that second denial?
Call you.
I did reach out to FEMA, who tells me they're looking into Lou's claim to see if they can at least give her some answers.
Not approved. Look at that.
If they do tell me there are a number of reasons someone's application might be denied, and insurance claim attorney David Murray tells me the same thing.
The disaster assistance is it's assistance, and it's not the same as buying an insurance policy. So while it provides some assistance, it doesn't provide protection like an insurance policy does. It is disappointing when people need assistance most that they don't get it, but it's a totally different program than a traditional insurance policy.
Disappointment? An understatement for Lou.
Hurt. The only place I have.
Knowing that help is her only option.
Hopefully, FEMA changed their mind.
Kate Hussey, WPTV News Channel 5.
Since we originally aired the story in January, Lou tells us that FEMA did give her a little bit less than $3,000 in assistance. We also spoke to a FEMA representative who says 94% of the people who filed claims after Ian received some sort of assistance. However, they do stress that it's meant to be assistance and not a replacement for insurance. FEMA only provides enough money to make your home livable. The agency does not cover the cost of full repairs.
Congress designed FEMA's individual assistance program only to provide a hand up to help jumpstart recovery for survivors. And for a lot of people, that might mean they'll receive a few $100s or a few $1,000s from FEMA to help make the living space in their primary residence habitable. And so insurance really is your first line of defense when you're in an area that gets hit by hurricanes so frequently.
If you are impacted by a disaster, here are some tips from FEMA on how to expedite your claim and ensure it gets approved. Get appraisals on all of the damage, document everything, and if you do get declared ineligible, try appealing that decision as soon as possible. El Nino and La Nina are two terms we hear a lot about in South Florida, especially during hurricane season. First Alert meteorologist John Gerard breaks down the terms and tells us what we can expect from El Nino this year.
So you've heard the terms El Nino and La Nina. What exactly does that mean in terms of our weather? Well, just to keep it simple, El Nino, which is what we're about to go into this hurricane season, is when the waters of the Pacific Ocean, or the tropical Pacific Ocean, more specifically back toward the equator, gets warmer than normal. And when that happens, it has an impact on the weather across the Atlantic Ocean and the Atlantic hurricane basin. The chance of an El Nino forming, as you can see, goes really high. There's the 50-50 line right there. So this is June, July, and August. That's July, August, September. Those are the months down there. As we get into the peak of the season, which I put inside this white box, we are very, very likely to see El Nino forming. This could be a game changer for the upcoming season. NOAA says an 80% chance or higher of El Nino forming. That increases vertical wind shear, which tears apart hurricanes and typically reduces the number of hurricanes that form. However, remember, it only takes one, so always be prepared.
Hurricanes bring all sorts of severe weather conditions. Tornadoes can be one of the most dangerous. Tornadoes are rated on a scale from EF0 to EF5, with EF0 being the weakest. Tornadoes, of course, can form in hurricanes. Usually they form on the outer edges of storms as they make landfall. You need two ingredients. You need wind shear in the atmosphere, and you need upward lift. You get that from the storms and the convection in the hurricane. Typically, we'll see EF1 and EF2 tornadoes form in the hurricanes that make landfall here. They're much smaller, but they can cause some significant damage. Despite Hurricane Ian making landfall on the west coast, over 100 miles away from us, it spawned an EF2 tornado in Delray Beach in the community of Kings Point. Packing winds up to 125 miles an hour, the tornado was powerful enough to flip cars, topple trees, and down power lines.
We didn't have a heck of a lot of time. We had no idea what was going to happen. What does someone like me do?
The Red Cross suggests having a go kit ready, packed with food, water, medicine, batteries, and chargers. Also prepare with a stay-at-home kit with 2 weeks worth of food, a month's worth of prescriptions, and a gallon of water per person in your household for 14 days. And for the moment, a tornado warning is issued for your area. Know what area of your home is the safest. Pick a small interior room with no windows, usually a bathroom or a closet on the lowest level possible of a sturdy home or building. If you live on the top floor of a condo or apartment building, check with a downstairs neighbor to see if you can evacuate in the event of severe weather. Storm surge is another devastating and deadly weather condition caused by hurricanes. Sea levels rose more than 13 feet in Fort Myers Beach as Ian made landfall. First Alert meteorologist Jennifer Correa explains why we all need to take storm surge forecasts seriously.
As we learned in last year's hurricane season, storm surge is such an important part of the forecast. So I chatted with Cody Fritz, who leads the storm surge unit at the National Hurricane Center in Miami, about what goes into his storm surge forecast.
There are many factors that go into making a storm surge forecast. It includes, how strong the storm is, certainly, that wind speed. Ultimately, that's what pushes the water towards the shoreline, but also how big that storm is. And then how fast or slow that storm moves can also, determine just how high the water is, not just at the coast, but how far inland that water might penetrate into coastal communities.
While hurricane force winds are very destructive, it is storm surge that is the biggest threat to life and property.
Storm surge historically has been the #1 killer, at least as it relates to direct deaths from a hurricane.
Unfortunately, Floridians have recently experienced the dangers of storm surge and what it is capable of. In September 2022, Hurricane Ian ripped apart Fort Myers Beach and the Florida southwest coast. Ian claimed 156 lives, and 41 of those people who lost their lives drowned in storm surge. Then there was Nicole, a Category 1 hurricane that came barreling into the Treasure Coast in November.
It has the ability to destroy homes, move homes off their foundations, move cars. It really is life-threatening.
While Ian was a much more powerful storm, Hurricane Nicole still was powerful enough to produce almost 5 feet of storm surge along parts of the Treasure Coast. And coastal residents in North Hutchinson Island experience exactly how bad just 5 feet of storm surge can be, because that was enough to wash away roads and swallow parts of homes into the ocean.
And then ultimately, as it kept chipping away, those homes that you saw again along the coast started to fall in to the ocean.
And as sea levels continue to rise, storm surge impacts will worsen.
And it's not just how high the water is, but it allows water to kind of penetrate in areas inland that it normally wouldn't have.
Now that hurricane season is here, there's one piece of advice we all need to take seriously.
Understand what your vulnerability is or what your risk is to these hazards, especially as it relates to storm surge, because ultimately you kind of also need to know if you live in an evacuation zone.
We cannot say it enough. It is so important to know if you live in an evacuation zone. Cody also mentioned to me that since the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, forecasters have been working really hard in creating a pathway that helps to better communicate storm surge to the public. That's why there are maps such as the inundation storm surge graphic, as well as the issuance of storm surge watches and warnings. In West Palm Beach, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Correa.
Still ahead on the 2023 First Alert Weather Special. Power outages are a part of hurricane season.
So this particular line is one of the original ones that we started hardening back in 2008.
FPL says it's taking an innovative approach to keeping everyone connected before, during, and after a storm.
In other words, I would stock up just in case.
Plus, stocking up on supplies. Why waiting until the last minute is a bad idea, and what you should include in your hurricane kit.
You're watching a WPTV First Alert Weather Special.
Electricity is one of the most talked about issues during hurricane season. Florida Power and Light is constantly making improvements to make sure your lights stay on even after a storm hits and moves through. Anchor Jay Cashmere sat down with FPL to talk about some of the lessons learned from last year.
Over an hour from the east coast of Florida, Okeechobee County comes into focus. From the iconic lake to the heart of this community, residents here have weathered many storms.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced a couple of really bad hurricanes.
Ken Keller moved here from Ohio 13 years ago and learned quickly, get a plan and know what to do.
I felt more prepared, first of all. Had my hurricane supplies all ready to go.
That was his impression of riding out hurricane season 2022. A season that left an impression on this entire area. for one simple fact.
After Hurricane Ian last year, nearly all customers in Okeechobee County had their power back on 24 hours after the storm exited the state.
FPL, the country's largest utility, has been working in this county for years to harden the grid.
So this particular line is one of the original ones that we started hardening back in 2008.
Vic Spruill is FPL's hardening manager for this region.
We have essentially hardened all the main circuits.
It's his job to transform power lines around here to withstand hurricane-force winds.
In Okeechobee County, we have hardened over 250 miles.
It's been a Herculean effort not just in Okeechobee, but across the state. Miles of infrastructure have been strengthened, and it doesn't stop there.
We've built in storm facilities that we can actually house crews to ride out a Category 4 or 5 storm, so that as soon as the storm passes, we can have 200 crews out ready to work in your local community to get the lights back on.
It's a massive hardening project that powered up over a decade ago and wrapped up in 2021, delivering a powerful recovery plan for the 24,000 customers who call this place home.
Get your plan together now. Make sure you know what you're going to do. If you're gonna evacuate, have a plan where you're gonna go.
Jay Cashmere, WPTV News Channel 5.
Supply shortages. It's another big issue we have to deal with, not only in the weeks and months before storm season, but even after a storm passes. Jessica Bruno takes a look at how you can get prepared now.
The thought of another hurricane season is never easy to take in.
No. It is scary.
Especially on a beautiful day at the beach.
Very confident in the state of Florida preparing the tourists and whatnot when they come down here.
It's 8908.
And over at Hall's Hardware,
In the event of a storm, this is going to be command central right here.
they've also got preparation on the mind.
During hurricane season, it's going to range from the hardware all the way up to generators. So it really depends on people's needs at the time.
Store manager Corbett McLaren says last year, supply chain issues set them back slightly.
On a small scale, because we buy independently from a lot of smaller vendors, we really didn't get hit as badly with that type of thing. Now, granted, some things coming from bigger warehouses were pinched a little bit.
So this year,
we are up and ready to go.
Just to be safe,
we pride ourselves in that.
They're stocking up early.
We stock heavily on the panel studs, the washered wing nuts for holding them on, sidewalk bolts for holding them down to the ground. And of course, we bring in backup generators.
Supply chain issues have been a hot button topic for almost 3 years now.
If you go back 2 years ago, the supply chain was totally disrupted. From China was not even an option. And so people put together a bit of a patchwork supply chain.
We saw supply chain issues affect hurricane season last year. Do you think that will happen again this year?
It may.
Which is why business analyst Carl Gould
That is still going on.
says prepping early is key.
For example, what do we need after a hurricane or right before? We need a lot of plywood, we need a lot of 2x6s and 2x8s, and we need a lot of drywall because those are the things that are affected before and after a hurricane. In other words, I would stock up just in case. Don't try to be just in time because we are going to keep going through these fluctuations for the next 9 to 12 months.
When do you think we'll start to see the supply chain really fully correct itself?
Things are easing and people are getting things, but to be fully normalized, it's not going to be after the next holiday season.
So stocking up now is the way to go.
Even though you may buy it this year and not use it, guess what? Another season's coming up next year, guys. So just stay stocked, stay prepared, and be ready. Florida, we've learned to live with them. It's a way of life.
I'm Contact 5 consumer investigator Jessica Bruno with WPTV News Channel 5.
Putting together a checklist of hurricane supplies that you'll need not only before, but during and after a storm hits. It's essential. First Alert meteorologist Katia Hall takes a look at the supplies you should have in your hurricane kit.
On WPTV.com, you will find a hurricane guide with a checklist that looks like this. So every year, I like to print off this checklist and just go through all the items just to make sure I'm good to go for hurricane season. So here's some of the items that you'll find on this list. A gallon of water per person per day. You'll need non-perishable food items, disposable plates, utensils, cups, things like that. Make sure you have cash at hand, and it's best to put this cash in a security, fireproof bag. bag, something to protect it in the event that there's water around. Make sure you have trash bags, hand sanitizer, all that stuff, some chargers, and also a weather radio in case the power goes out. Something else you'll need, of course, flashlights, plenty of batteries, and a prescription medicine for a week's supply. You'll also need a first aid kit. Best to make sure your puppies and kitties are all good to go as well. Make sure they have plenty of food and water, and have something for the kids to do in the event that when the power goes out, there's no electricity, so things like card games, board games, things like that.
The state is offering 2 expanded sales tax holidays to keep you prepared for hurricane season. They run from May 27th to June 9th, and again, just before the peak of the storm season, August 26th through September 8th. You won't have to pay sales tax on items like batteries, portable radios, common household supplies like laundry and trash bags. Even pet food is on the list this year. We'll be right back. It doesn't really matter if this is your first hurricane season or you've been through them for the last few decades. It's important to be prepared. Discuss now with your family what you're going to do. Get a plan in place now so that you can deal with hurricanes as they approach. It takes so much stress away as the storm threatens. You can also depend on us to watch the tropics all season long and bring you the latest information from the National Hurricane Center. Download our WPTV Hurricane Guide for detailed information on your area, like a county-by-county breakdown of shelter options and evacuation routes. Should a hurricane form, we will be tracking it on the WPTV News app. Download it right now by scanning the QR code on your screen. You can also find the latest updates from the First Alert Weather team posted on our website, WPTV.com. Thank you for joining us on this First Alert Weather special, and wishing you a quiet and safe hurricane season.
Thank you for watching this WPTV First Alert Weather Special.